unfold.
Okay, so today we're diving into something truly wild. A single archaeological site that's so old, so complex, and honestly so completely out of place that it's forced us to tear up the textbooks on human history. I mean, really, think about it. How did civilization begin? We all kind of have the same story in our heads, right? The one we learned in school. It's simple, it's logical, but what if that story is completely, totally backward? So for the longest time, the story went like this. First, we invent farming. That lets us settle down in one place. And then, once we've got food and shelter sorted, we have the time and energy to build big, fancy temples. Makes sense, right? Well, a discovery in Turkey flips that whole idea on its head. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the desire to build a massive temple came first, and that was the very thing that forced us to invent farming in the first place. So let me introduce you to the main character of our story, Göbekli Tepe, and that's pronounced Göbekli Tepe. Now, this isn't just some pile of old rocks. It's a huge, incredibly sophisticated temple complex built by hunter-gatherers, people who, according to that old story, shouldn't have been able to build, well, anything like this. And you really need to wrap your head around the timeline to get how insane this is. We think of Stonehenge, the pyramids, as the definition of ancient. But Göbekli Tepe is more than twice as old as both of them. It was built an incredible 6,000 years before Stonehenge. I mean, that shouldn't be possible. At least, that's what we thought. So the question is obvious, right? How on earth could a society of hunter-gatherers, people with no metal tools, no wheels, no domesticated animals, pull off a construction project on this scale? You know what? Let's treat this like an archaeological cold case. Let's follow the clues. And the engineering, it's just staggering. The quarries they found nearby show us exactly how they did it. They're using these hard flint tools to painstakingly chip away channels in the limestone bedrock. Then they'd use levers and wedges to crack these enormous monoliths free. And get this, moving a single stone, some weighing up to 20 tons, would have taken hundreds of people, all working together, all driven by some incredibly powerful shared belief. And they weren't just moving big rocks around. They were literally building their gods, or maybe their ancestors. These iconic T-shaped pillars, they aren't just abstract shapes. And we know this because some of them have carvings of arms, hands, even belts with these little fox pelt loincloths. What you're looking at are stylized, faceless humanoid figures, all arranged in circles like they're in some kind of meeting or sacred gathering. And the art on these figures, well, it's not exactly warm and fuzzy. You don't see any cozy scenes of home and hearth here. This is a very masculine, very predatory world. It's filled with snakes, aggressive wild boars, powerful leopards, and lions. This was clearly a religion that wasn't about celebrating peaceful harvests. It was about appeasing, or maybe controlling, the dangerous and wild forces of their world. But there's one pillar that really stands out from the rest. It seems to be telling a specific story, a whole narrative scene carved in stone. It's known as the vulture stone, and it's one of the most important clues we have. And this one stone perfectly captures the debate that's still raging about this site. On the one hand, you have the mainstream archaeological view. This scene shows a sky burial. You see the vulture, the headless man. The idea is that the bird is carrying the man's soul to the afterlife. It's a powerful ritual scene. But then there's a much more controversial theory that says it's actually an astronomical map marking a devastating comet impact that triggered a massive climate change event. A story of death and transformation, no matter which way you slice it. And that whole theme of death and headless figures, it's not just symbolic. The actual forensic evidence is, well, it's pretty chilling. Archaeologists have found fragments from 3 human skulls that were deliberately modified after death. We're talking deep grooves carved into them, probably to tie ropes around, holes drilled right through them, maybe for hanging them up, and clear, unmistakable marks from stone tools used to scrape the flesh clean. I mean, just let that sink in. It paints this incredible and frankly terrifying picture. Imagine this ritual space, not just with stone pillars, but festooned with the hanging, decorated skulls of revered ancestors, or maybe vanquished enemies. Okay, so this brings us right back to that central puzzle. Building all this, carving these massive pillars, performing these intense, complex rituals, it would have required a huge, coordinated workforce. But again, in a world before farming, how did they feed everyone? What fueled this whole monumental effort? Well, the answer is written in the trash they left behind. Tens of thousands of animal bones. And here's the kicker. A staggering 60% of those bones come from just one species, the goiter gazelle. This wasn't just a few guys going out for a hunt. This is the hallmark of enormous, highly organized hunting drives, all to get massive amounts of meat for huge ritual feasts. And believe me, those feasts were not dry. Archaeologists have unearthed these huge limestone tubs all over the site. A single one of these things could hold up to 160 liters. Can you imagine? But what were they for? Well, a chemical analysis of the residue inside gave us the answer. Calcium oxalate, or, as it's better known, Beer's stone. It's a byproduct you only get from fermenting grain. Yes, the world's first temple builders were being fueled by what seems to be industrial quantities of beer, all brewed from wild grains. This is like Exhibit A for the beer before bread hypothesis.
So, okay, we have a temple, we have massive feasts, we have lots and lots of beer made from wild grain. But there is one final piece of evidence that ties it all together. The final clue, the absolute smoking gun. It wasn't in stone, and it wasn't in bone. It was in genetics. You see, geneticists have been able to trace all the domesticated einkorn wheat we have on the entire planet back to a single common ancestor. And where did that wild ancestor grow? On the slopes of the Karakadal Mountains. And guess what? Those mountains are just 30 kilometers, basically a day's walk, from Göbekli Tepe. And the timing of this domestication event, it lines up perfectly with when the temple was being built. It's an undeniable link. And all of a sudden, the whole sequence of events just clicks into place. You have this powerful need to build a temple, and that organizes your society. To feed and, let's be honest, reward that huge workforce, you have to throw these enormous feasts. Those feasts create an insatiable demand for grain, not just for food, but for beer. And that pressure is what pushes these hunter-gatherers to go from just gathering wild wheat to actively cultivating it. They literally invent farming to keep the religious party going. So you see, this is the massive paradigm shift we're talking about. In the old model, agriculture was the cause, and big temples were the result. But the Göbekli Tepe model just flips it completely. Here, the cause was religion, this abstract need to build for the gods, and the result, almost as a byproduct, was the invention of agriculture itself. So what does this all mean? It tells us that the Neolithic Revolution, maybe the biggest change in human history, wasn't just driven by a need for more food. It was first and foremost a revolution of the mind. A shared idea, a spiritual hunger, was powerful enough to completely re-engineer human society and, in the long run, the entire planet. And that leaves us with a pretty profound question, doesn't it? If a spiritual hunger could literally invent farming, what other impossible human achievements were driven not by simple necessity, but by belief? We always assume that our greatest innovations are born from practical needs, but Göbekli Tepe suggests that sometimes the most powerful engine for change is just the desire to build something for a world that exists only in our heads.